Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I want to welcome each and every one of you once again to the Singles Talk Show. My name is Ayodeji, Pastor Ayodeji Onifade, and I'm going to be your host for today. And today, I have two very interesting and very young people here to discuss the topic today, the pros and cons of dating in your local assembly. And the two people that I have today, one a man and the other a woman, government bred and owned. They were been married in this church, and today they are going to share their experience with us today. And the first person that I'm going to be bringing out to the stage at first, they say that ladies first is going to be Mrs. Josephine Alonge. I'm just going to read about her real quick. Mrs. Joseph Alonge is a project manager with extensive experience managing a wide range of fire alarm projects and service renewal agreement for a top infrastructure company. She is also the CEO of Josie Dishes, a growing catering service that reflects a passion for food and entrepreneurship. She is happily married, a proud mother of two amazing daughters, and she's also a committed believer and serves as a children worker in the local church assembly, where she is passionate about impacting the next generation. So, without any further ado, I bring you to the stage the one and only Mrs. Josephine Alonge. Hello, Josephine. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me, sir?
All right. Yeah, I can hear you loud and
All
clear.
right. Thank you so much for introduction. Thank you for bringing me on.
All right, it's good to have you here.
I'm happy
Before
to
we
be here
start,
too.
I just wanted to say thank you for coming here. You said in your, like I read in your bio, you're a project manager, a business and entrepreneur, a mother, a
Right.
wife. How do you get to juggle all these things all together at once and still be and super efficient?
I feel like it's a lot, but just knowing what to prioritize and just having the scheduling has really helped me to make time for each, like job, being a mom, and also time for business as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. So
Welcome.
I'm going to bring the next guest in right now. My next guest is someone who wears a lot of caps. Pastor Dipo has been, for over 20 years, has taught financial literacy and empowered people to build businesses, invest wisely, and create generational wealth. He has a degree in business administration, an MBA, and business operating both locally and globally. He has learned one truth, that is, wealth is built through discipline, business ownership, and smart investing. He believes that anyone can create wealth with the right knowledge and strategy. He shares financial concepts that anyone can apply to becoming financially successful. And today, he will be sharing with us how we, dating a church setting can be beneficial or be a disadvantage for singles. Now, I have the pleasure of bringing onto the stage the one and only Pastor Deepo. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing phenomenal. Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you for being here. I know your bow, didn't do justice to your personality. I know you try to be humble. You left a lot of things out. I know you personally. I know you wear, a lot of hard. As a pastor, as a like you heard from his bio, is a financial guru. I know you have your hand is a whole lot of things, and I'm just going to ask you, one. Bonus question. I know you're supposed to ask the bonus question at the end of things, but I'm just gonna, put it out there. This is just an unpaid, kind of thing, right? I know you also do consultancy. How do you get to be all these things? Be a financial guru, be a father, a husband, a church leader, and of course a pastor, and still be all efficient in everything that you do.
Yeah, I think everything kind of intertwines. So when you look at being a business person, a father, it's still a business person, a father, a pastor, a youth leader. Everything boils down to your purpose, right? And if your purpose aligns, everything just kind of fits like a puzzle. So I don't really see individual piece as something separate. I see it all as part of my purpose, and it makes it a lot easier and joyful to do on a day-to-day basis without necessarily saying, man, how do I juggle all these things at the same time? So
Wow, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, you could already tell like this is a man that is loaded, and I'm sure pretty much we're gonna enjoy you here today. We're gonna, learn from both of yours depth of knowledge and experience, which is going to help the singles out there. So the topic that we're going to be discussing and looking at today is the pros and cons of dating in your local church. What are the pros and cons of dating in your local church? And I know both of you growing up in government, you probably heard about singles saying, no, I don't want to date in my local church, things like that. Where some people feel like, oh, wow, that's nothing wrong. It's good. So we want to look at both sides of the spectrum and basically just discuss, the pros and cons. And then, at the end of the day, we would like to look at, what's the right thing to do? Is it totally wrong? Because I hear a lot of singles these days saying, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to, date in my local assembly. But what are the things that they are missing for making those choices? Those are some of the things that we're going to look at today. So without further ado, we're going to dive into the questioning first of all. But, like always, I'm a gentleman, so I'm going to be starting with the ladies first. Pastor Dikwa, I know you agree with me, So, Sister Josephine, I want to ask, bring the question to you. Why should an individual choose to date in their local assembly in the first place? Why would I want to look inward? There are a lot of guys or girls, as the case may be, out there. Why would I want to date or get married within my local assembly? What reason could someone have to want to make that choice, do you think?
I mean, I feel like when you date someone within your local assembly, you both listen to the same message, you share the same faith, right? And also that gives you time to also observe that person. So because that person now is not a total stranger to you, it gives you time to observe and see how they do things. A lot of times you see people saying, "Oh, I was friends with this person. I never knew I can date this person." But over time, they build that relationship to the point that they can consider that potential person like a partner. So I feel like he has his own side, but basically, like dating inward within the church helps you to observe and know some type of character in a person. And of course, you guys share the same belief as well because you listen to the same message. But yeah, that's all I can say
I
for
mean,
that to that right now.
wow, thank you for that answer. I mean, one thing I heard that you said, it's like you share more of the same background. You said you listen to the same
Right.
message, you
Mm-hmm.
probably have the same pastor. So it makes things a lot easier for both
Easier.
of you from the same roots. You listen to the same message, probably you believe the same thing. So it could be a good thing if you decide to look inwards, especially from your local assembly. Wow, thank you. That's so beautiful. Thank you, Josephine. To you, Pastor Deepa, same question. Why would somebody want to look inward where there's so many opportunities out there? The world is big and large. So why would I want to restrict myself to my local assembly instead of, diving out into the wild ocean of options that is out there?
yes, I think it gives you the ability to kind of see their totality because from one standpoint, if you're coming to church, in some cases you're probably coming with your family, maybe your parents, your mom, and things of that nature. And one thing we got to understand is that when you're marrying somebody, for example, you're not just marrying them, you're marrying their family, you're marrying their culture. And to Sister Josephine's standpoint, you get a chance to actually see that person on a consistent basis. So you're able to notice certain traits, certain virtues that in most cases out there in the world, you may not see on an ongoing basis, right?
Right.
So I think that's one of the benefits of doing that. Number two, to buttress on her point, when you're hearing the same message, the likelihood of both of you being transformed together is high because, for example, if you're hearing messages about tithing, right? You're on the same page that hey, if I were to get married to this person, we already know that this is what our foundation needs to be built on. We get to learn about parenting. All
Mhm.
these different nuances that we hear about in the church can become something where you now build your home upon. I think the other thing too is when you spend time, I guess when you start dating someone in the church, it reduces the amount of work you have to do because once again you kind of grew up with this person, right? unlike out there in the world, you may not necessarily know their background or where they're coming from, and then you're kind of starting afresh. So I kind of feel like that's a good foundation. Not to say it's always right, but at least those are some of the pros.
Wow, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I mean, this is starting to be interesting, and I kind of agree
And
with.
also,
Sorry.
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, sir.
All right. So I kind of agree with both of you. You know, for someone myself who dated and married in the church, what you both are saying makes a lot of sense because you have the same pastor, you listen to the same messages, you have the, believe quote unquote right now in the same doctrine. So you probably wouldn't have issues concerning doctrinal issues, sets of beliefs, things you believe about your church, which could translate into dressing, certain time of things. And I think in a way, just like you both said, it helps foster those relationship a lot, easier. But then the follow-up question to that is that if that is true, does that, dating in your local assembly necessarily foster stronger spiritual foundation for marriage? Just because this person, we're in the same church, just because we listen to the same pastor, just because we believe in the same thing, and we grew up in the same church, does that mean that's a strong foundation for a good spiritual foundation in marriage?
I think so.
All right.
And the reason why I said so is because someone, if you definitely, like Pastor Dikwa said, if something is wrong and you both are listening to the same message, you know to pray together. You know to go to the deacons or the pastors or any mentors within the church to help, to pray with you guys when there's crisis. But versus somebody that doesn't go to your church, per se, maybe the person is only play religious, right? And this person called themselves Christian, but there's an issue. You both cannot pray together. He doesn't really know. Maybe you're saying, well, let us pray. And he's saying, oh, I don't have the time to pray right now.
Mhm.
But when you guys are within the same the same local assembly, there's going to be some type of mentor leaders that you guys look up to when there's issue that you guys can trust and go to it. Not necessarily going to the pastors, but the elders, the deaconess, the deacons that can pray with you guys and and solve things. I think yes, definitely yes.
Beautiful. Thank you, Josephine. Pastor Dewar, same to you.
Yes, I think it may not necessarily start off with both parties being at the same spiritual level. One may be lower than the other, but I think going back to what we've been saying, if you've been hearing the same word, the message that you've been hearing together can become a reference point, right? In the sense that one person may want to oblige to this and then the other person's not on board. You can easily say, remember what pastor said, remember this and that. And I also think too that when you're part of a church community, you get to see role models in your assembly, people who have successful marriage, and you're curious, what are you doing differently, right? I've had a couple of young people, for example, one that I can remember specifically come up to me and just say, listen, this is what I'm going through right now in my relationship. I'm courting. What do you think? What kind of books did you read? So you have people in your community that can become that reference point, and you also have people who've been in a marriage longer than you that you can, also go to, like Sister Josephine said, to kind of ask, hey, what are you doing in your marriage that's working, right? And if you don't have that community and you are isolated, it makes it a little bit difficult to build a solid relationship because you don't have a good support system.
Absolutely. I mean, great responses from both of you too, which I also pretty much agree to. Just like Josephine said, you have, and Pastor Duke also alluded to that, is that you have leaders you can look up to, people you can lead up to, people who could call you to order immediately if you're going out of bounds and stuff like that. And I feel like it helps because I also believe strongly that you'll probably be in safe hands, dating from the people from the, someone from the same church, like, their background, their family, everything about them. probably you've been in the church together all your lives and stuff like that. So it kind of makes sense that it's like you rightly said, it's a foundation. So it's a building space for you to begin to build all those spiritual levels upon. And that's a beautiful answer. Thank you, both of you. But before we go on, I want to tell our viewers back home, those who are watching us, if you have any questions that you want to ask our viewers, please type it in the chat out there. We'll read those questions and ask them. If you have anything bothering you concerning the topic that we are dealing with right now, put them in the chat, and then we'll be able to ask them directly. All right. So now we've looked about the pros of dating in your local assembly. What could be the cons? What could be a disadvantage? Like we all know, everything in life also has an advantage, also has a disadvantage. So what could be the cons of dating within the local assembly? Josephine, you want to go first?
Yes, I would say getting unnecessary opinions about your relationship, because people knows both of you, like two of you to be dating. People want to have their own opinions. They want to tell you what to do, and also if you're like a private person like myself, that may be a disaster because I remember when I was dating my husband, even though it was in a different state, we would come together. You can never tell. We were like that for like 2 years, and nobody could tell that we're dating. So that's the kind of person that I am. So I feel like having like intruders, people that want to know, be nosy, they want to be in your business, that could be like a lot of disadvantages as well. If you're a very reserved person and you don't really like too much people in your business, for sure.
All right, yeah, I kind of get that also because everybody knows you're item.
Yeah.
Everybody want to be in your business. Everybody is asking you what's going on. When is the marriage?
Right.
Like people are probably planning your relationship way more than you guys are doing. So I kind of understand that. That's a very good point. Pastor people say what would be the cons of dating in your local church or local assembly?
Yeah, I think having someone you're dating who have character flaws and you assuming that because you're hearing the same word, you're in the same environment, that they're going to change or you're going to change them. Unfortunately, some people may just never change. We all know that even though we're all Christians, we go to the same church. There are people who've been in the same church 10, 15, 20 years. Their character has never changed, right? And unfortunately, we don't truly see people's character until you get into the marriage. You may see somebody, you may think you know them because you've grown up with them 10, 15 years and you feel like you know everything about them. But one thing about marriage, at least for those who are married, you know that what you think you know it's not even a quarter of what you actually know once you get into it. So I feel like that can also be a hindrance because some people can be deceptive, right? Everybody comes to church, they put up this facade and this holy cap, but behind the scene, we truly don't know them. So I feel like that can be definitely a huge issue when it comes to dating locally, but then at the same time, that can be anywhere, right? So
if I get you, Pastor Dipo, you're saying like, just because sometimes, some people do have past, it could be a guy, it could be, a girl. So you're saying like, say, for example, if somebody has, led some kind of life way in the past and everybody knew about them in the church, and take, for example, maybe at a point in time, they, gave their life to Christ and, they're good now. And let's say that person is a guy and there's a girl in the same church who this guy is now interested in, and probably because they know his history. And now could that also become an issue, in the church because you grew up in the church, they knew you when you were bad, but you're giving your life to Christ, you're good right now. Should that also be an issue? Since we say we're from the same church, we have the same pastor, we believe in Christ. Why does issues like that comes to become an issue when you want to date somebody else's child?
Well, no, I think that's actually a pro because you've known their past and you see the difference as to who they are now. You know that certainly that whatever they used to do, based on what you see now by God's grace, that they're no longer into that lifestyle. So I think that's a pro. What I'm referring to more so is just people coming to church as regular Christians.
Mhm.
We praise the Lord, we pray, and that's all we see within the four corners of the church, without
Mhm.
knowing what's happening behind the scene until you get into the marriage. So that's kind of what I'm referring to. But of course, if somebody's transformed and it's visible that this person was once this way, now they're this way,
Mhm.
I don't think that should impact or influence a woman or man's decision from wanting to move forward with a relationship.
All right, thank you. I thought you wanted to say something earlier.
Yeah, something just popped in my head also. Like, also another cons could be when maybe you guys prayed about it and you just feel like, okay, this marriage is not gonna work. Sometimes people may want to force their relationship to work
Mhm.
just because they like both of you together. So it makes it harder on the other partner that want to move on to actually
Mhm.
move on. So I just want to throw that also in.
Yeah, that's also a con. Yeah, it becomes a lot difficult to move
Yeah,
on.
to move
And
on with your life.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're gonna get there. All right, thank you so much. I mean, it's been interesting so far. One thing that I noticed that was a trend, especially during the days of people like my parents, was like they married within the church. It was easier for them, brother this and brother that, and you had that so much in those days. This is the daughter of Pastor this is the son of Elder this, first Reverend, regional pastor of this, marrying that regional pastors, and it was like a trend during those days of my parents, because I was born, into government. I grew up,
Mhm.
close to 5 decades now. I've seen that trend. But one thing we've seen in recent time is that trend is beginning to diminish. We're not really seeing uh, guys really marrying each other from, even within we're not even talking within the same assembly. We're even talking about government as a whole. Like we're even seeing less marriages even within government, let alone within the same assembly. So I just wanted to ask you, Josephine, maybe you want to go first. What do you think could be responsible for a change in trend from what our parents used to have? They felt comfortable dating each other. They felt comfortable, marrying for all the points that you guys have. Oh, that's the daughter of Pastor this because she came from that home. She must be, of a certain
Mhm.
expected character, and because of that, they were interested in that. But over the years, we've seen guys saying now, even when they hear that you are the son or the daughter of Pastor this or Elder this, even the guys or the girls don't want to have anything to do with you. What do you think could be responsible for this, trend from the status quo all these years?
I feel like right now, our generation or new generation right now, they have choice.
Mhm.
Back then, I feel like most of their parents enforce those relationships. So that means that they don't really have options to choose whoever they want to be with. I remember, I don't want to put someone on the spot, but I remember someone telling me like, "Oh, I married this guy because my mom says so." But nowadays, like, okay, this guy has some flaws that I cannot deal with. Even though your parent is asking you to date that person, you cannot deal with that. So you be like, no. Even though this person is a pastor's son, is a pastor's daughter, this character I cannot live with it. So I think it's just a matter of choice right now. Versus back in the days where you have to listen to your parents and just make them happy and settle and even trying to make the marriage work, even there's a lot of violence in the relationship, you just want to settle because you don't have choice. That's the choice that your parent made for you at that time.
Oh, beautiful. Wow. Interesting. Wow. But is that really the case? Like you're saying, like back in the days, our parents, our grandparents, our own grandparents, our grandmas and grandpas, first our own parents be like, hey, that's the son of Pastor John. You have to
Yeah,
marry Pastor John. You can see, look at that boy. He's a good boy,
yeah.
And then, our parents were really obedient. They obeyed our
Bye.
grandparents, with no questions. It's not like we are disobedient. I'm even saying because I'm still of this generation. So come on, I'm not that I'm not that I'm not that old. Yes, but I get what you're saying. Pastor, do you
Yeah.
have the same opinions as Josephine?
Yeah, I think part of the reason too is like it becomes a situation, a family reality. The word is twisted in my mouth when you become familiar with
Mm-hmm.
somebody, right? If I grew up with somebody in the church, at this point you're like my brother and sister because you brother
Right.
this, brother so for so long. That's
Mm-hmm.
in some cases to think of this person being your spouse is like, yo, you're literally like my sister. Like, I want you to marry. I want you to be successful, right? So that's one angle. I think another angle too is you got to look at it from a physical standpoint. You may not just be attracted to somebody in the church based on their
Exactly.
physique. You may be spiritual, you may have all the great character, but if I'm not physically attracted to you, there's nothing to talk about. You still my brother and sister, right? So that's another angle. And then thirdly, I think it's also very microscopic thinking to think that we only have to marry within government. Like Sister Josephine said, our generation is so much different, right? The key, I mean, we're seeing Africans marrying Asians. We're seeing
Right.
Africans marrying Caucasians. So our generation is not more so about marrying Nigerians or marrying somebody in our church, but cannot, I want to marry somebody I can fall in love with, somebody who's
Exactly.
solid, grounded spiritually. I use myself as an example, and I always like to tell this story when I get it. My wife is Igbo. She's not from government, none of that stuff. And I remember one time, when I was mentioning this to somebody in our church, this was years before I got married. And this man said, "Oh, don't marry Igbos. Do you know about the Biafra wars? What they did to da 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 da?" And I'm thinking to myself, what does that have to do with somebody that I love? That's your generation. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Right.
So I think it's just essential for us to understand that, when you talk about relationship, it goes beyond the four walls of a church. Ideally, it will make sense to marry somebody within a local church, provided that they meet your criteria, they're God-fearing, physically you're attracted to them, as well as godly characters. But if they don't have all those components together, then I think it's okay to look externally.
Wow. I mean, you raised a very salient point, Pastor Deepo. One that I was still discussing with some young people in church. I mean, right today, and they used a word that I'm going to throw out there. They said probably the reason is because we've been thrown into that brotherhood zone. Like you rightly
Mm,
said, you've been brother zoned into, thinking like, we're brothers and sisters, because take for example, all our churches. That's one of the good things I liked about churches in Dopamine NA. We're like one big family. Right here in Texas, we could go to anybody's house. I know some of our pastors that I don't have to tell them. I could show up unannounced. Walking into their home, tell them I'm here to pass the night without prior notice, and there's no they wouldn't have an issue with that. And we have a whole bunch of all these young people in the church, who've been staying together at the pastor's house. We could decide to go to somebody else's house tomorrow. And we've grown in that brotherhood and sisterhood kind of spirit over the years that it becomes almost a taboo to see ourselves or find ourselves attractive to one another to the point where we could now say, I want to date. In fact, at a point in time, I asked them a question today: can you date this person? And just like you said, there was this, like, it's my brother. I was like, from where?
Right.
You guys are not related
You're
from
not, you're not, bro.
nowhere. I was like, you guys are not related from nowhere. But it's like, he's my brother, and he was like, she's my sister. So in situations like this, what can we do about that? And I also kind of agree with you, like, oh, you don't have to marry, within God family. It's not restricted. There's no
right.
law or rules or biblical scripture saying that it has to be there. God could lead you to someone from another church, from another tribe, another race, another continent, for all I care. But I'm saying, like, this generation is beginning to see it like a taboo from dating or even marrying from the same church. And that's why we're discussing that today, to let them see, like, oh no, it's not necessarily a bad thing to do it. But we're beginning to identify some of those problems, right? One of them, like Pastor said, and also Josephine said, is because we're beginning to see ourselves as brothers and sisters. Now, if someone find themselves in that situation where they're attracted to someone in the church, and the thought of, oh, I can't go meet her because we've been brothers and sisters for all these years, how should they deal with issues like that? Josephine, how can someone, who've been brothers and sisters over the years, and then out of the blue, maybe one of them is developing a feeling for the other person, but sometimes our parents could be like, how are you going to date that person? That person is your sister now. Don't. How should they deal with issues like that if they find themselves in issues like that?
Honestly, I would say first you need to pray. That's the first thing. You need to pray and have that conviction that a person is meant to be your partner. And after prayer, I would say definitely maybe talk to your mentor, about it, or maybe your pastor too, depending on your relationship with your pastor. But I know that going to a pastor can be a little bit. I don't know how to better put it, but some people might be like, why can't you just talk to me instead of you going to pastor to talk about it? But I would say maybe definitely talk to like a mentor or pray about it and find a way to communicate that feelings to that person. And I feel like your delivery also matter, the way you present that, like, oh God, if God really show you or God show you, tells you and you have that conviction in your heart that this person is meant to be your partner, you can tell the person, you can ask the person to pray about it. And from there you guys can go on. And if you feel like it's the issue that you need to involve the pastor in it, and then go ahead and and tell the pastor about it. So the pastor can kind of like bridge the gap and call both of you together and pray to share more light and clarity in the relationship to make it work.
Yeah, beautiful. I mean, that's one of the reason why we have our pastors in the church.
Right.
When things gets complicated to you, hey, run to the pastor. Thank you so much, Sister Josephine. I mean, that's a beautiful way out. Pastor Deepo, same. If someone find themselves in a situation where they're falling in love to their supported brother, and sister in the church, how can they go about it to making sure that their feeling is passed across without complications?
Yeah, I mean, I think just like you would when you're attracted to anybody in or outside of the church, right? You do express that in a certain way. Hey, can we, I mean, you have to be a smooth dude to be able to pull that off. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but I think, like you said, your approach, if you go to somebody, hey, I'd love to take you out for dinner tonight. Or, can we go out to the movies? Just something real chill. And I don't want to give out all the games for free. You have to pay for consultation for that. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, come on, Pastor Deepo.
Money.
But
Hey, you guys are really looking out.
Money making pastor.
But help your brother right now, you know that.
no, but I think on a serious note, when you do come across in a way, because everything starts out as a friendship, right?
Mhm.
If you
Right.
approach it that way, you go out, if there is a mutual attractiveness, right? It's gonna
Click.
click. Like
Right.
it's not something you force. And when it clicks, that's when you start to take it a little bit more seriously. What's like Sister Josephine said, at that point you want to pray about it, like, hey, this is how we're feeling now. We know we have to now kind of keep certain boundaries. We want to let maybe our mentors know, maybe a deacon or pastor you're close to. So at that point you're taking it step by step,
Yeah.
as opposed to jumping the gun. Now
Right.
in some cases the parents may not necessarily oblige to it, because once again they've seen you as maybe their son or daughter for so long, but the concept of you marrying their child just doesn't gel whatsoever. And those are very tough situations, right? I mean, I've been in one of those situations in the past, but the reality is if it's meant to be, it's going to be. No parent, nobody can stop it, but at the same time you have to follow due process to make sure that you're staying on course, and God will definitely make everything happen in its time.
Wow, beautiful. I think, if that's one thing that the two of you have said, especially for anyone who find themselves in this situation, is that use your pastor. I always say that they are a very good resource for us in our church. And I've often found and heard young people, especially young people, who say, I don't want my pastor to be in my business. I don't want people to be in my business. I don't want a pastor to know, and things like that. What do you think about that? Especially as it comes to relationship. I just want us to talk about that real quick, because most young people, especially in this generation, because while we were married, even before you went to speak to a sister, you got to let your pastor know, especially if that pastor is in that, if that sister is in that same assembly with you. You just can't go talk to a sister without, hey, pastor, because we've seen situations like that where, things got complicated and things like that. So the pastor is always a resource. What do you guys think, especially for the young ones? What advice would you give to them in letting their pastors know as early as they can about their relationship? Is this something they should hide from their pastor? Is this something that or at what point do you think people should tell their pastors about their relationship? I mean, this is just on a side note.
Can we twist that question a little bit?
Okay.
I feel like pastors need to start doing a lot of preaching about marriage and how to be communicate your feelings to a potential partner.
Okay.
I would say Pastor Fagui did a preaching way back. I believe it was 2019, and that preaching actually changed my life. And the title is "Before I Say I Do." And that teaching was really thorough. So the reason why I said so is a lot of people stay in the zone of friendship zone, and where in reality you can see potential in this person. You know that you really like this person, and what ended up happening is maybe the sister eventually got married or the brother eventually got married, and you be like, oh, I do have a feelings. It's just like I don't really know how to communicate that feelings to that brother. Um, so basically I kind of like switch the question, but I would say pastors should definitely, preach more about this in our local assembly. But back to your question in regards to like people that are stuck and they don't really know or they don't want to get the pastor or encourage them to talk to pastor about their relationship. I think uh, if you really belong to your local assembly, I don't think you should eliminate your pastor from your life. And that doesn't mean like your pastor is your God or what's or not, but they are there to guide you, also to guide you aright. So if something is not really clear to you and you know for sure, and God already showed you, even let's even say God has not shown you anything and you really, really interested in this person, definitely I think you should talk to your pastor and build that relationship. I don't think we have any pastor in government that I know that are not really welcoming, that wouldn't want to listen to you. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a local pastor. Let's even say if you know that okay, telling your local pastor may make it look a little bit awkward. Maybe find another pastor that you're really close with, another assembly, like a deacon or young pastor like Pastor Shiner. If you definitely have a relationship, you can talk to that person. So that way that information is not really in your local assembly and you don't feel some type of weird about talking about that relationship with that person to the pastor.
All right. Somebody posted a very, very interesting question in the chat, which I wanted to throw out there to the two of you. And this is the question. The person says, if a relationship doesn't work, if they try to be in a relationship with someone in the church and that relationship doesn't work, can they be in a relationship with another person from the same church or from the same assembly? Pastor,
Yeah.
I'm going to start on that.
Yeah, I would say so. So this is the old Depot talking now, like the old me, not the new me, right? I've been in that type of situation before, right? And I think, and everybody that I've quote unquote dated, just to be open, I'm still very friends. I'm friends with them, right? As believers, just because something doesn't work out doesn't mean you can't continue the brotherly or sisterly love. It just meant that it's even good that you know that this is not meant to be within the context of the church family, right? And still love and still wish the other person successful. I think the reason why a lot of things don't work out and people kind of harbor this bitterness is because they either try to force it to happen or they see that person as a bad person because of maybe one character flaw, right? But the reality is that what you see before you get is only a fraction, right? It's only when you get into it, even to your perfect God-fearing, soulmate, you're going to see things that you would never have dreamt about once you get married. And I remember Daddy Gio said this very long time ago. I've never forgotten the statement. I think we were celebrating the 50th anniversary of Daddy Gio, Mommy Gio in House of Hope one time. And he was sitting on the pulpit and he said, even if an angel comes from heaven and tells you that this is your wife, this is your husband, you will have problems. I never forgot that. Because sometimes we feel like we got to marry our soulmate. Oh, this is the perfect person. There is no such thing, right? In marriage, in relationship, you have to work things out. And I feel like a lot of people in our generation, we just want that ideal perfect person without understanding that marriage takes work. You have to work it out for it to actually work the way you want it to.
Absolutely, absolutely. Josephine, you same question. You know,
Yeah, I feel like
can they start over in the same church?
yes, and also she added like another question about can the person, I can't remember the question, maybe the person can potentially become a player or target player. I think it depends. If you're actually dating and you're dating like as a hobby, let's say for instance, you're dating or you like brother A today,
Mm-hmm.
and tomorrow brother B shows up, you ended that relationship because of brother B.
Mm-hmm.
And then you went ahead to date brother B, and then brother C showed up, or brother C is making more money, and you got to know about it. Okay, brother B is no longer good.
Mm.
Yes, definitely you will be tagged a player, because at this point it's like you don't really have a
Mm.
purpose.
Yeah.
You're just all over the place. You just want to play a game. You just want to see what it is with all the individuals or potential person that you're dating. So yes, definitely you can be target player if you're dating brother A, B, Z because of the whatever they have or whatever you just want to know about them.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, both of you. I mean, it's very interesting so far. But the thing about when we're discussing things like this, time is never on our side. You know, time is never on our friend. And we could be here for 2 hours and we will still not scratch the surface. But we still have some couple of time more. But I wanted to, ask you this question now. What are the potential that someone could see that could discourage them from one of it? I know we've mentioned quite a few, but most often people always say just to help you guys because of time. It's like just like the question we just finished asking. Somebody says like if it doesn't work out with someone, then it becomes a national news. It becomes news in the church. It becomes very difficult for you to have another relationship within the church. Is that a true potential problem, for someone to discourage them from dating within each other, basically just for the fear that it might not work out with someone? Or maybe the question should be, why should someone in the first place think way ahead of time that it might not work with someone, and that's the reason why they don't want to date, within the church? If you understand my question. Yes, any one of you can take it.
Practical.
Yeah, I think when if you're in a community where you observe in your local church that other people have marital issues, right? Whether it's the older generation or you even see your peers or people a little bit older, and you know that they have a marriage issue just due to gossip and things like that, and you don't really have a good community where things are working, no model. That puts fear as well, as far as like, hey, I know young people have told me that they'll never get married
Mm,
just because of what they see in their personal home as well
mhm,
as in the church. But when you have a community where you actually see what a successful home looks like, that gives you hope that this could potentially work. But to
mhm.
answer your question, I think not having good role models within a church community, divorce, and all those things can also hinder your ability to want to move forward with engaging in a relationship within a church context, because to what we've been saying, everybody will know your business at that point.
Oh, beautiful. Yes. So we'll move forward right now. So take for example, you have a situation where two people, a girl and a guy from the same assembly or from the same denomination, uh, get to be dating each other. I mean, things are working well and they're in a relationship. The pastor is aware, the elders are aware, the church is aware. Things are going on smoothly. What are those boundaries that you think they need to put in place, to help them continue to have a healthy relationship? We know that boundaries are necessary, especially one that is in close, proximity to your pastor, to your, and the slightest of things could be misconstrued. I remember while I was dating my wife in the same church, people like to talk. We came from a generation where and in Nigeria, where holiness is like, you can't even hold a girl. I mean, you guys in the United States are, you could literally hug your pastor in front of a pastor and you'll be fine, and nobody will raise an eyebrow. You can't even hold your. I came from a generation, you can't even hold your fiance. I mean, this is a girl that everybody in the church knew that you were there. You can't even hold them in the hand and walk into the church, let alone you want to hug or put your hands around them. You'll be labeled, something I don't want to say right here. But in spite of all that, we still know that we still have to put some boundaries in place. What are those healthy boundaries you feel people dating from the same assembly should put in place to safeguard their relationship? Josephine, you want to go first?
I think what came to my head is know what and what to share, whether with your mentor or just any friends at all within the church, because I feel like the words of mouth travel really fast. Also, I do want to say you have to communicate with your partner. So let's say, for instance, this is so funny because I remember when I was dating my husband, then we don't used to argue with nothing. We're just like friends. We go our separate ways. You can't really tell. So I think that's just one of the boundaries that I set with him. I said, I wait, listen. I don't want anybody from my local assembly to know that we're dating. So this is what we're gonna do. And that really works for us.
Okay.
Until it decided to post my picture on social media, guess what? I got thousands of messages on my phone. I was like, go and delete my picture. But definitely I would say like talks about what you really like and what you don't like, what you don't want to put out there. Doesn't mean like you don't want to hug each other in the church. Doesn't mean you the type of communication. Maybe let's say like you guys have this disagreement. You don't necessarily have to involve third party. It is something that you want to solve within yourself. So just kind of like set certain boundaries that you know that can save that relationship. I think it depends on the the potential partners that are in a relationship together.
All right, Pastor Dibor.
Yeah, I think the biggest one is probably like sexual temptation, right? Which is huge. And if a person is not even if you're self-disciplined, when you come together with the opposite sex, there are tendencies to want to engage in things that are not supposed to be done prior to you getting married. So I
Right.
think having that boundary from a standpoint of, hey, number one, we can't be in the same room together. Like that just has to be a guideline because no matter how strong you think you are spiritually, when your hormones and your feelings get involved, those can override your spirituality, like
Mhm.
facts, right? So I think
Right.
that distance would definitely help out a lot in creating that structure. And well, I would say probably that's the biggest thing, to be honest with you, right? Just making sure that you have guidelines as to where you can go together, making sure you're never alone in the same environment.
Mhm.
And if you can do that from a purity standpoint, that would definitely go a long way.
All right. Thank you so much. I want to read a question from the group chat. Maybe Pastor Dipo will be able to answer this because this, directly, relates to you because of your calling of being a pastor. Someone said, hey, because Josephine was saying, oh, even if you don't want to talk to your local pastor, you could talk to, some pastor from another assembly, within the same denomination, and somebody is asking, will our local pastors be okay with not telling them that you are going out with someone? Would the local assembly be okay with you talking to someone else outside of their church instead of talking to your pastor? What does that feel? Does that feel like you don't trust the pastor, you don't like them, or you don't feel comfortable with them? How do you think, does that make a pastor really feel good? You being a pastor, Pastor Depo, how do you respond to that?
Well, I'm a different breed type of pastor. I really don't care, like to be honest with you. But I do think that your pastor has a covering over you. They have that they know you. They have spiritual authority over you because you worship, within their domain or whatnot. And I think to override them to go elsewhere shows that you don't trust their judgment. And regardless of what you think about your pastor, if you're worshiping in an assembly and you're hearing the word from that pastor, God has given them that spiritual authority. They can see things that you're not going to see. right? And to not have your pastor involved, I think it, it is a mishap, right? And that could lead to, potential dangers in the future that you don't want to bargain for. I've known people that, that I don't want to put names out there, give any hints, but because they didn't have that spiritual, or they didn't follow protocols or due process, today their marriage is pretty much done.
Yeah.
And it's just facts, whether or not you like it or not. I think it's just a good idea to make sure that your pastor is involved, so that way you can get the spiritual guidance and things of that nature.
I agree. Josephine, what do you think about that? You think the
I
pastor
think,
should be agree?
I
Or
think
do you
it's,
think, I know you're not a pastor, but do you feel like that take, for example, your relationship? I'm not saying you have problem, or God
right.
forbid, that's not going to ever happen to you in Jesus' name. But
Amen.
would you be more comfortable talking to someone else from outside than your local assembly pastor?
No, because I do have a relationship with my pastor.
Beautiful.
But the thing is, but back to the question, the first initial question that you threw at Pastor Deeper, I think to Pastor Deeper's point also, I would say yes, because I was in this something similar situation. I won't call names, but I was close to a pastor, and what really happened is, I kind of like discussed something with that pastor, with the hope that by the time my pastor get back from Nigeria, I can discuss that with my pastor. But guess what happened? The same pastor that I talked to went to Nigeria. I don't even know, maybe he went to Nigeria or not, and discussed that with my pastor. And my pastor called me, wasn't happy about it. And I have to explain to him that that wasn't the situation. It just happened like this person talked to you faster than I could, and that resolved the like the issue. And it wasn't like an issue also, but my pastor just wanted me to know that I can trust him. Is my pastor. But yeah, I think definitely. But in terms of like marriage wise, if something is going on, I don't think I want to talk to outsider pastor, because I would trust my pastor more, because my husband and I, we worship in the same place. So my pastor knows my husband. So I think I'll be more comfortable going to my local pastor and let him know what the situation is.
Absolutely, because being a pastor myself for several years, you know, we're human beings. It's like, when a pastor is over a church, we see them as our sheep, our flock. We feel
Right.
personally responsible for everything that goes on in your life. Except your pastor is devil, reincarnated himself. Your pastor wants the best for you, and that's why I tell this young one, your some people want to do things and they're hiding it from their pastor. I'm always like, so what do you think? Your pastor is the devil? He's gonna, do some charm on you, that the things that you want to do is not gonna work. This is a man who is in charge of your life. He wants the best for you. If things are good for you, things are good for him also. So we are always out there. Just want to put this out there that, hey, use your pastor. For those of you singles that are listening to us, your pastor are a good resource to you. Use them, use them beautifully. For your own good and for your own advantage. And you have heard from our two guests here, the people who didn't do it, what happened? A word is enough for the wise. And I know we're pressed for time right now. Like I said, when you're talking about interesting things like this, time is never your friends. But before we go, I just like one quick word from the two of you, regarding this issue, pros and cons of dating within your local assembly. I know you, Josephine, you dated within the church, even though not the same assembly, but within government, even though Pastor Dipper didn't, but I want to ask you both, what would you advise? I understand, what Pastor Duke also said earlier on, in terms of, you still have to follow God's leading, follow God's direction. There are times that God could lead you outside of your local assembly or your denomination. But in terms of and in respect to the topic that we're discussing today, what would you advise, people to, if it could be they within the church or outside the church?
I think it depends on, if you look inward and you don't see any potential person, look outside.
Good, yeah,
Basically,
absolutely.
because you can't tie yourself in, age is not on your side. If you look inward, you can't find nobody, you'll be out.
No?
Yes.
All right, Pastor D. Some guys are looking for some tips. They're still waiting. They're still waiting on you for those tips.
Yeah, I think if you like you said, if you look inwardly and you make an attempt to genuinely, like we've been saying, you genuinely want to find somebody. Because
Right.
to be honest with you, whether it's in the church or outside of the church, the biggest thing is find someone that you can connect with. And if you find someone in the church that you can connect with, by all means, seize that opportunity. Because if you have this mindset or this box that you say, you know what, this person needs to meet this criteria, or I don't want to date anybody in government, this and that, you could very well be passing on the very best person that God has in plan for you, right? And yeah, you
Sure.
can marry outside, but who's to say that's God's plan? But at the
Mm.
end of the day, if you're following God's leading and God is bringing people your way, it's okay to date within the church to see how things work. If it doesn't work, still keep that relationship tight. Wish the person good luck, keep the friendship, but just don't close the door to government or any other church that you're not that's not your local church, and just say that that's not for you, because you might miss out on the best thing that God has planned for you.
Wow, thank you so much, Pastor Deepo. The last statement you made, I've had a lot of singles say that a lot. I've had that a lot, and I always have to have that conversation with them. They will say, "Nah, I can never marry in God for me. Nah, I can never marry for my church. Nah, why are you closing? Why are you closing the door on something significant and magnificent that God could do, in the church?" And what I always point out to them is like, what you're saying. You're saying that all the guys and all the girls in government in North America are bad. That also includes you, because somebody else is saying the same thing,
Yeah,
and you are also in that equation. Which means you're a terrible person yourself. And that person now looked at you like, oh, okay. Now I need to start looking at this differently. Thank you, for that word, for also letting it out there to let them know, do not close the door, on what God wants to do on your life. And that's where I'm going to submit it personally. Like, if God is telling any one of our singles to look inward, to look within your local assembly or within government as a whole, do it. For those of us who have married within, government, we're enjoying our marriage. I mean, Josephine can testify to that. Look at her today, looking all good and
and
all.
for those of us who didn't marry in government, we too are enjoying our marriage. You feel me?
I just knew that
I'm,
you were
I'm
gonna.
14 years in the game, man.
Yes, and for also, of course, like the Pastor Deepa said, what matters is that you are fulfilling God's purpose over your
And
life.
Sure.
connect with your
Doesn't matter if
person.
you marry in government or marry outside. Are you in God's plan? Are you in God's purpose? Are you doing things according to God's will? But that's what matters to me. But hey, as a pastor in government, oh man, come on, guys, we got some good
Sure.
chicks over here. Check them out. You have that license from me. Check out the girls. And guys, if you need tips, you know the pastor to go to, Pastor D. All right. Thank you so much, guys, for being here
Thank you.
today. It's been a wonderful time, discussing this issue. And I know our audience have learned a thing or two. You might not know the extent of what you have done today. Somebody has gained wisdom today. Somebody has gained understanding. You have probably changed somebody's life, somebody's future without you knowing it right now. I just want to thank you both for the grace of God upon your life. And I pray for
Thank
your
you.
homes and your marriages, that it will continue to be an exemplary example. It will
Amen.
be a place where God dwells. Your homes, shall continue to radiate the greatness and the goodness of God. That generations will come to you and ask you, how does it feel to have a godly marriage?
Amen.
And you'll be able to
Amen.
sit them down and show them
Amen.
how it be. God bless you both. But before we go, I just wanted to make a quick announcement to all our viewers, especially the singles that are here, that October 25th, we're going to have a singles regional program at the House of Hope in Maryland. It's going to be a wonderful time. If you're single within that region, please make it down to House of Hope. It's going to be a time of refreshment. It's going to be a time of learning, especially for those of you who are single. It's for singles. Please make your way there. And then the national conference for singles is going to be November 22nd. Details of that is going to be sent out currently. Please look out for those two programs. First one is going to be next week, October 23rd. The singles regional program taking place at House of Hope, and then the Singles National Conference in November 22nd. Once again, Josephine Alonga, thank you so much for being here. The Lord honors you. Thank you for honoring an invitation.
Amen.
God bless you. And also, Pastor Deepo, thank you so much.
Thank you,
I hope you guys will honor our invitation next time we call on you,
Absolutely.
because
Yes, sir.
definitely this is not going to be the last, of us, with you guys. Thank you so much for
Thank you,
coming out.
sir.
For all
Thanks
our
for
guests
having us,
today,
sir.
thank you so much for tuning in. God bless you all. See
Amen.
you on the next.
Have a
All
great
right.
night.
Take
Hallelujah.
care.